Attorneys for Jean Carroll, the woman accusing the former president of rape in a New York civil trial, called two witnesses today to bolster her recent testimony. Lisa Birnbach, a longtime friend of Carroll, described the phone call she says she received moments after the alleged attack in the mid-1990s, and how Carroll was, quote, breathless, hyperventilating, and emotional. The second witness, Jessica Leeds, claimed the former president sexually assaulted her on an airplane in the late 1970s. The former president has denied wrongdoing in both accounts. Senior legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed joins us. Paula Reed joins us right now from the courthouse with the latest. So, Paula, what more can you tell us about today's testimony?
Well, Anderson, Carroll's attorneys put on these witnesses to help bolster their case. For example, when it comes to Lisa Birnbach, a contemporaneous account of this alleged assault is so critical because we're talking about allegations of something that happened nearly 30 years ago. So to have someone say, look, in 1996, I remember she called me almost immediately after this happened. Here's what she sounded like. Here's how I interpreted it. What was interesting is Birnbach said she told Carroll at the time that what she was hearing about was clearly a rape. But she said at the time, Carroll, she didn't want to see it in those terms. She still saw it as a fight or as a tussle. But her account is definitely something that can bolster Carroll's case. But defense attorneys on cross-examination tried to highlight her dislike of Trump, pointing to posts that she's made that make it clear that politically she's not a fan of Trump. Now, as you know, the jury also heard from Jessica Leeds, who alleges that she was assaulted on a plane in the 1970s by Trump. She said that she was upgraded to first class, seated next to Trump, and that he allegedly tried to kiss her and grope her. Now, Trump has denied those allegations, but her testimony is part of an effort by Carroll's attorneys to establish that her allegations are part of a pattern of alleged behavior by former President Trump.
Do we know if the former president is actually going to testify?
So no, he was never expected to testify, but his lawyer actually confirmed that shortly after court today. And Anderson, I can tell you, I speak with many of the former President Trump's attorneys, and some of his attorneys in the other criminal investigations are going to be quite relieved to hear that their client will not be on the stand. In this case, there were some concerns about how other issues could come up in this civil case that could complicate those other criminal investigations, particularly when it comes to his credibility.
And will the defense call any witnesses? Do you know when the trial may end?
Yeah, so the timeline we're looking at now, Anderson, is that Carroll's lawyers are expected to wrap up their case on Thursday. Then the Trump attorneys will get their chance to put on a defense. But as of now, they're only expected to call about one witness that is supposed to be an expert who will testify remotely. There's no court on Friday, so it appears that at this time this could go to the jury as early as Monday.
All right, Paul Reed, appreciate it. Thanks. Joining me now is former federal prosecutor Jessica Roth, now a professor at Cardozo School of Law. Does it make sense that the former president wouldn't testify?
It does. I think that he would be a very, very challenging witness, and he has lots of exposure in all of these other cases. So I think from his attorney's perspective, it makes a lot of sense that he would not testify.
Does it make sense that he doesn't go to the court? Does it sort of send a message that he doesn't, that it's not a legitimate case?
Yeah, I think there's a real risk that the jury will make that inference that he's not taking this seriously. That has to be balanced, however, against also the possibility that the jury would make inferences based on his demeanor in court if he were to attend. So I think there are risks both ways.
So much depends on, really it all depends on the jury's perception of E. Jean Carroll, her testimony, and I guess the testimony of maybe her friend of Lisa Birnbach.
Yeah, I think Lisa Birnbach, who testified today, was likely the most important witness in this case, except for Jean Carroll herself, because it's Lisa Birnbach who, as Paula said, Jean Carroll called moments after the alleged rape happened, and she gave an account at that time that was remarkably consistent with what she said on the stand in court last week. So Lisa Birnbach really corroborates that it happened then, that it happened the way Jean Carroll has described it. The notion that she would have, that Jean Carroll would have fabricated this back in 1996 and then kept quiet about it, until 2019 when she wrote her book, just sort of boggles the mind. And so if you think that that it happened and she told Lisa Birnbach about it at the time, and that Lisa Birnbach honored the promise that she made to Jean Carroll in that conversation on the day that it allegedly happened, to keep quiet until Jean Carroll wanted to speak about it on her own, I mean, it's very, very powerful. And also the details that Lisa Birnbach she remembered the conversation. She remembered that she was giving her children dinner at around 6 p.m. I mean, her recall was very specific. That made the testimony, I thought, seem quite credible.
The Trump attorneys were saying, well, look, you've written nasty things about the former president. You clearly don't like the former president. Do you think that, I mean, I guess it makes sense that they would do that.
It makes perfect sense that they would ask her those questions. They're trying to suggest that she's biased against the former president, and that's why she's offering this testimony. Lisa Birnbach owned the fact that she doesn't like Donald Trump, and she's made those statements on social media and on a podcast. She didn't hide anything in that regard, but I think she said quite firmly on redirect, but I wouldn't lie under oath just because I don't like Donald Trump.
Jessica Leeds also gave detailed her account. I interviewed her years ago when she first surfaced with these allegations about being assaulted on an airplane sitting next to him. Is it controversial that she was allowed to testify? I mean, if this was would all judges have allowed her testimony?
So it's really interesting. Because this is being tried in federal court, the federal rules of evidence apply, and there are specific rules that apply in cases involving alleged sexual assault that are very permissive in terms of allowing in evidence of other alleged sexual assaults by the defendant.
Okay.
Many states do not have such a rule. So the fact that that rule applies made it much easier for the court to admit this incident.
The fact that it's a civil case, does that play into it as well?
That actually does not.
It doesn't. So it's just the fact that it's in federal court.
The fact that it's in federal court and it's this particular kind of charge.
Ms. Leeds also testified she did not report the incident, until the former president decided to run for office. She said she, quote, thought he was not the kind of person we wanted as president. Again, how will that comment sit with the jury?
Again, I think these were lines of cross-examination that the defense needed to bring out that make sense. Again, they're trying to suggest that she's testifying as she did because of political bias. But I thought, again, she explained that she was coming forward because it was true, and she wanted to raise her voice of corroboration of what Jean Carroll had said. And again, she owned the fact that I think she also said, I don't like Donald Trump. I didn't think he was the kind of person that he should be president. So the fact that the witnesses are, I thought, relatively straightforward about the fact that they don't care for Donald Trump, it helps their credibility. They don't appear to be hiding any bias.
Interesting. Jessica Roth, appreciate it. Thank you.